that irrigation businesses have been paying attention, because I saw a figure of 9.4 billion euros in terms of market. And if I can summarize Dr. Hunetmark's contribution, I would say that irrigation technology is definitely the role of business, but managing the context is the role of government. And I'd like to thank you for that contribution. Also, your slide on water management context, going forward, I think that gives us a perfect framework. You introduced topics such as wastewater reuse and salinity issues, and that brings us to the next speaker, Mr. Moh Tiing Liang. Yes, I'm hoping that he's online. Yes, he is. Thank you very much. Of Singapore, the PUB, the Water Management Agency in Singapore. Mr. Moh Tiing Liang is Deputy Director at the Industry and Technology Collaboration Department in PUB. And he will take us through some of the high technology solutions that have been developed in Singapore in an extremely water scarce environment. Mr. Moh Tiing Liang, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Let me just pull out the slides. Let us wait for the slides to load. Okay, William, can you see my slides? Okay, great. I think you can see my slides now. Good morning, everyone in Egypt. My name is Tiing Liang from PUB, which is Singapore's National Water Agency. I think having sat through the presentations from the distinguished speakers before me, I think the difference between Singapore and Egypt cannot be more stark in terms of the rainfall that we get. But at the same time, I think there are also many similarities to the water challenges that we face. I think one of the key points that struck me based on the earlier presentations is that Singapore actually has 100 times more rain than Cairo. And yet we are 4 times smaller than Cairo in terms of land area. And this difference, I think, contributes to a large part of the water scarcity that we see in Singapore today. So during the presentation by Dr. Nasser, he mentioned about the challenges of Arab countries' water resources. He mentioned about climate change and also increasing water demand. And I think on this slide, it is just pure coincidence that I think 2 of the challenges that Dr. Nasser has mentioned are also the water challenges that Singapore faces. The third challenge that I have put on this slide is our land constraint. And as mentioned just now, Singapore is 4 times smaller than Cairo. So even though we may have 100 times more rain than Cairo, we are unable to collect every single drop of rain that falls from the sky. And this is the primary reason why we are categorized as water scarce. And the last reason, which I put here, which no one before me has mentioned, is the rising public expectations upon water utilities and water authorities to provide good water 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there are 3 key strategies when it comes to managing water in Singapore. Given the large amount of rain that we get, I think it's very logical that one of the strategies is to try to capture every single drop of rain that falls from the sky as much as we can. The second strategy is on reusing water. I think the speakers before me have spoken about water recycling for agriculture. But in Singapore, being an urban city-state, there is not much agriculture that we can talk about. But we can still use water recycling for industrial uses. And as you will see from the next few slides, actually, recycled water forms a very significant part of the water supply for Singapore's industries. The third strategy is to desalinate seawater. We are an island nation. We are surrounded by the sea. So again, it is very logical to just take that seawater and desalinate it. So with these 3 key strategies, we have developed a diversified portfolio of water resources to ensure that we never go thirsty. So on the two tabs on the left, you see the traditional sources of water, which is what we collect over our very small land area, as well as what we import from our neighbor Malaysia. On the right, you see another two tabs, and these are the non-conventional tabs of NEWater, which is our own brand of recycled water, as well as desalinated water. So as far as PUB is concerned, it's about managing these four sources of water, trying to balance which tap we should draw more from, depending on the climate conditions. And our aim is to make sure that no one goes thirsty in Singapore. Now, NEWater technology is very well established. We are not the first country to use recycled water. I think the Americans have done it before us. And in Namibia, in Africa, they have also done it before us. Today, many other countries like Australia also uses recycled water. So in Singapore, we take the treated wastewater from the wastewater treatment plant after it leaves the final sedimentation tank. Instead of throwing that treated effluent out to the sea, we send it to a NEWater treatment plant where we polish the water through microfiltration or ultrafiltration, reverse osmosis, and ultraviolet disinfection. And out comes very, very clean water that is in fact even purer than what you get from the tap. Now, NEWater is safe. I think in Singapore, we track over 300 physical, chemical, radiological, and microbiological parameters. And in 1 year, we do 350,000 tests done on over 30,000 water samples just to make sure that the water is safe. And the types of lab tests that we have done include bacteriological quality tests, as well as tests to check for chemicals of health significance. And these are the ones that will cause chronic health effects. So another advantage of NEWater, and should I say desalination as well, is that they are climate resilient. The few speakers before me have spoken about climate change. NEWater, as well as desalination, is independent of the climate. As long as I have the first drop, I'm able to generate more fresh water for everybody's use. Now, while we have made great progress over the last 20 years or so in diversifying our water resources, we always have an eye on the future. We project that in another 40 years' time, our water demand is going to increase by 2 times. Our energy required to produce that water will increase by 4 times. And the sludge that's generated from all the wastewater treated will increase by 2 times. So this business as usual scenario is not the best state of affairs. We need to deliver the water demand in another 40 years at the current energy and sludge footprints. So we do this through science and technology and through working in partnership with the water industry. I think there are 5 key areas that I would like to just highlight. One is on desalination and water reuse. It is apt that the SWCC speakers spoke about using more efficient technologies to produce desalinated water. We are trying to do the same, and we have much to learn from SWCC. We want to improve the efficiency of used water treatment, which is wastewater treatment essentially, to try to make the wastewater treatment process more energy self-sufficient. Industrial water use is a very significant part of our water consumption. We want the industries to be more efficient in their water consumption. The next key area is on waste reduction and resource recovery, trying to recover useful products from the sludge that's sent for incineration. And last but not least, we talk about coastal protection and climate change adaptation, which is a very hot topic nowadays. So just to highlight a few significant projects. We have a floating solar farm that we commissioned earlier this year. This solar farm can produce 60 megawatt peak of solar energy, and this will offset 7% of PUB's annual energy needs. And it is actually enough energy to supply all the 5 water supply treatment plants that we have now in Singapore. And in fact, we are now one of the few countries in the world to achieve 100% green water treatment plants. I spoke about desalination. We have 4 desalination plants now. The latest desalination plant is what you see on screen. It doesn't look like a desalination plant because it's partially underground, but we try to integrate a desalination plant with public parks so that the public can enjoy the green rooftop that you see on screen. And this desalination plant is unique because it can draw water both from the sea as well as from the nearby reservoir. We spoke about waste reduction and resource recovery. This is important for a small country like Singapore because we do not have enough land to be a landfill. We now have an offshore landfill that you see on screen. If we continue to generate the same amount of waste that we do today, this landfill will be completely filled by 2035. So now we are trying to see how we can reduce the waste that we produce and turn that sludge into useful products. Last but not least, I spoke about coastal protection. For a low-lying island nation like Singapore, this is very, very important. 30% of Singapore is less than 5 meters above sea level. So if we don't do the work of coastal protection now, we'll be inundated by the sea in 100 years. So allow me to just make 3 quick pictures for the key activities that we are doing now. In the spirit of decarbonization and trying to reduce our carbon emissions, we have just launched a Carbon Zero Grand Challenge. This is an open innovation challenge whereby we invite solutions from the world to help us become a zero carbon emitter. If there are any suggestions from Egypt, from Spain, from anyone in the audience towards how Singapore can reduce our carbon emissions in our water and wastewater processes, please feel free to come forward and approach me. We also do some mind share and knowledge sharing with other countries. We have a training course upcoming in April 2022 on water reuse. We have been using water reuse for the last 20 years. We are comfortable with it. And I think many other countries are also looking towards water recycling to overcome their water challenges. We welcome you to come to Singapore to visit our plants and to share how we do water recycling here in Singapore. And last but not least, like the Cairo Water Week, we have the Singapore International Water Week that is happening in April 2022 as well. And I would like to welcome all the distinguished panelists today, as well as the audience in Cairo to visit Singapore and attend the Singapore International Water Week. Share with us your technologies, your solutions, and your ideas to make the world a more water secure place. That's all I have. Thank you very much. Over to you, William.
Thank you very much, Moh, for this concise overview of the many achievements in Singapore. And if I can, we still have some time, and I'd like to first of all thank our live panelists here for your contribution, and especially also our online panelists, our remote panelists. That's not always easy. And I think I can draw, before we go to a couple of questions for the panelists, I can draw a couple of threads from our discussion. One that struck me was, and if we look at the range of technologies, one size does not fit all. We saw examples from Yemen, rangeland and water supply in relation to women. We saw examples from high-tech water treatment facilities, from desalination facilities, from drip irrigation, remote control. So a wide range of technologies that fit a certain condition. We also discussed some conditions, some enabling conditions. And we saw something about a water management context, public-private partnerships, joint financing. So this whole business of where business comes in, where people come in, and where government comes in. That for me is another thread that I draw from this very rich panel discussion.